Bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue. Good morning, everyone. As we begin our meeting today and on behalf of Ottawa City Council, I wish to acknowledge that Ottawa is built on unceded Anishinaabe Algonquin territory. The peoples of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation have lived on this territory for millennia. Their culture and presence have nurtured and continue to nurture this land. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples and land of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation and honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. All right, I will ask the committee coordinator to do a roll call of members.
Councillor Luloff.
Present.
Councillor Dudas.
Present.
Councillor Curry.
Here.
Councillor Gower.
Here.
Councillor Tierney. Councillor King.
Here.
Councillor Leeper.
Good morning.
Councillor Brockington.
Here.
Councillor Menard.
Here.
Councillor Giroux. Vice Chair Kitts. Oh.
Here.
You have quorum.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Okay, thank you. What's that? All right, we have our minutes from the Finance and Corporate Services meeting of February the 7th. Are those minutes received and approved?
Received.
And then we have status update from the Office of the City Clerk that the Finance and Corporate Services Committee received this report for information. Is that received? Item 4.2, city representation and delegate attendance at the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario annual conferences. And Vice Chair Kitts, I believe you have a motion.
I do. I don't think it's necessary to read out all of the whereases. It's basically adding Councillor Kavanagh as a delegate to FCM and myself as a delegate to AMO. So I'll just read, therefore be it resolved that Councillor Kavanagh be approved as a delegate to the FCM annual conference and trade show, and Councillor Kitts be approved as a delegate to the AMO annual conference.
Okay, are there any comments on the motion or on the recommendation of approving the membership of those for those events?
Carried.
Carried? Okay, thank you, everyone. So that's carried obviously on both the motion and the representation. Okay, item 5 from Planning, Real Estate and Economic Development, the 2021 Business Improvement Area and Spark Street Mall Authority annual reports and audited financial statements. Is that received? Item 5.2, declaration of surplus land at 2060 Lantier Drive and transfer to Ottawa Community Land Development Corporation. And again, Vice Chair Kitts, you have a motion?
Yes, it's deferral motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whereas the staff report entitled Declaration of Surplus Land 2060 Lantier Drive and transfer to Ottawa Community Lands Development Corporation requests Finance and Corporate Services Committee declare 2060 Lantier as surplus to city needs, and whereas staff is requesting that the property be transferred to the OCLDC for sale, and whereas a request was received on Monday, March 6, 2023 by Fire Services to use the property, and whereas staff is requesting this report be deferred to allow for further review and consultation with the Fire Services on this site. Therefore, be it resolved that the report be deferred until additional consultations are completed with Fire Services. Thank you.
Is that carried? Okay. Item 5.3 is the Brownfield grant application for 2 Montreal Road and 3 Selkirk Street. And I understand we have a presentation on this morning. Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, staff have a brief presentation.
Okay, thank you, Don.
So, Mr. Mayor, Stream Shen, who's the Brownfields Coordinator for this application, will be providing the presentation, and he's accompanied by Derek Moody.
Good morning, Mayor, members of the committee. My name is Stream Shen, and I'm a planner with the city's development review team. I'm here before you today to provide a presentation on the Brownfield grant application for 2 Montreal Road and 3 Selkirk Street. Next slide, please. The site itself is the Western Gateway to Vanier, located east of Rideau River, south of Montreal Road, west of Montgomery Street, and north of Selkirk Street. Next slide, please. The site hosts the former Eastview Shopping Center, and the environmental site assessment was completed and identified both soil and groundwater contamination. The remediation activity now is mostly complete, and there's some groundwater monitoring taking place right now. It is important to note that the funding will not be provided until the applicant has provided a record of site condition, demonstrating that the site has been sufficiently remediated and meets all ministry regulations. Next slide, please. The developer is Main & Main, and they're proposing to develop the property through 3 phases, with 3 high-rise mixed-use buildings comprised of approximately 1,000 residential units and 2,500 square meters of commercial spaces. The site plan for the phase 1 building is complete, and that's the proposal shown on the screen. Next slide, please. On December 2022, Council suspended the Brownfield program for any new applications or applications that have yet to be considered by City Council, pending a full evaluation of all the CIP program in Q2 of this year. However, Council approved a motion from Councillor Plante to exclude Brownfield applications for properties within the Montreal Road corridor. And as a result, this application is raised to committee and council for consideration. The requested funding is approximately $3.6 million, based on 85% of the municipal property tax uplift over 10 years. It's important to note that this site is unique because it also received approval for the Montreal Road CIP funding, which is capped at $5 million based on a uplift of 75% of the post-development tax increase. So when the Montreal Road CIP is combined with the current Brownfield CIP, the total grant funding remains capped at $5 million. So therefore, if committee and council were to approve this application, the total eligible funding does not change. The only difference is that the $3.6 million under this Brownfield grant will be recovered at 85% of tax uplift instead of 75%. The remainder will be continue to be recovered based on 75% under the Montreal Road program. Next slide, please. The economic benefit for the project include $276 million in direct construction values, $510 million in new residential and commercial assessment, and $1.56 million in new taxes annually. It's estimated to add an additional revenue to the city of $9.2 million over the next 10 years, once the Brownfield funding has been fully paid out. And that concludes my presentation, and we're available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Just to be clear on the 85% versus 75%, is it accurate to say that the same amount of money will be obtained through the program, but just on a different timetable because it's 85% instead of 75%? Because in the end, it's capped anyway, right? Is that accurate?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Mayor. Good morning to you and colleagues. The gas station, the Petro-Canada gas station, is that included on this property, or is it off property and separate from this parcel of land?
There used to be a Esso station on the site, and it's located along Montreal Road. That was later demolished and is part of this proposal.
Your report on page 5 lists a number of what I will call hazardous materials that the environmental assessments identified. And do we know what the source of those materials are?
There's a variety of sources, which include the gas station. There's adjacent potentially contaminated activities, including dry cleaners. The site also hosted a former lumber yard on the southeast corner, as well as general site application across the site. The contamination is not only on the former gas station site, but it's in the entire 2 parcels, which is a lot larger in area.
So before we get to the point of the municipality offering a brownfields grant, what is the responsibility of current and past property owners to remedy soil and water contamination that's been identified?
The reason why we're providing this grant is because Main & Main was the one who purchased the property. They weren't the original polluter who created the issue. Derek, you talk about.
So in terms of responsibility, perhaps we're straying into a legal territory there. Certainly if, you know, the lands are to redevelop to a more sensitive use, there is an obligation to clean the lands. But in terms of previous landowners from sometimes decades ago, I'm not sure I'm prepared to comment on that.
Yeah, I'm trying to separate the application before us, which I'm actually supportive of. I want to see this renewal in this part of Vanier. But at the end of the day, I also want responsible parties to be held accountable for, as your report indicates, contaminating groundwater, which I think is serious, and soil contamination. So if we know this exists separate from a brownfield application, does the city take note and pursue the matter further? Or do we just wait and encourage people to file brownfield applications, which will lead to the site being remedied and cleaned up?
So, Mr. Chair, in terms of certainly we identify historic land uses across the city that are of concern, so that when new developments come forward, particular, you know, in terms of residential or a more sensitive land use, those are flagged, and they are typically, they have to be addressed through the redevelopment process. So there's conditions established. Mr. Shen referred to a record of site condition before, you know, the new use can be instituted, and that's all regulated through provincial requirements.
Okay, I'll leave it there. I'll just give a quick example in my ward where we had former gas station on a piece of property that developers on a strip mall, which included a gas station, and developers had kicked the tires for years. But when they found out that the soil is contaminated through years of servicing the site, no one wanted to touch it because they thought it would be too expensive to take care of. But the fact is, the community, which is surrounded by residential community, has potentially contaminated soil, if not other things. So I see this as a bigger challenge. I do support the application before us, but I just wanted to point out that I do think responsible parties should take greater care and be held to a higher level of accountability to avoid this contamination to begin with. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Just a quick follow-up question. So I want to be clear about something here, that the this development, it would seem, is going ahead no matter what. This is really just a question of whether it's being funded out of the brownfields or out of the CIP. Is that ultimately what our decision today is? Because it would go ahead under the CIP anyway, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Councillor Menard?
Yeah, Mayor, I see the local councillor has their hand up, so I'll defer to them and then speak after.
Okay. Conseillère Plante?
Oui, salut, bonjour tout le monde. Merci d'être là aujourd'hui. It's a bit bananas in my office, so you may hear other voices. I'll make this very quick. I just want to say we've I've only just gotten to know Main and Main, the developer, over the last couple of months since I've gotten elected. They did a lot of work with the community association to bring this application forward. A lot of great amenities being added into the community. I don't normally, get really excited about a development like this, but I'm really happy with everything that's been put forward and the comments that I've received from the community. Just very quickly on the brown field, which I know is causing some concern for people. As you guys probably know, that area of Vanier was actually sort of the former city of Ottawa dump. And so this is why the soil in the area needs to be remediated. Anybody sort of doing any kind of development in Vanier has to take this in consideration, which is why we support the brownfield grants on that end of town. I know there's some concerns around brownfield grants, but I believe, and from the report that I've read, it really does contribute to the revitalization of Montreal Road. So I hope you will support it. And I don't know if the developer is here though. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I don't see them on the call. But je suis là si vous avez des questions et je vous souhaite tous et à toutes une excellente journée. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, Conseillère Plante. Councillor Menard.
Thanks very much, Mayor. I'm just wondering on the different breakdowns of costs in what we're approving. So there's a 3.6 million for the brownfield remediation grant. And then can you just detail the next two pieces? So there's the 3.1 million for the deferral of DCs. And then there's the 817,000 on top of that for the Municipal Leadership Strategy Fund. Can you just go through the two of those?
So of course, through you, Chair, the 3.6 is the brownfield rehabilitation grant. It's based on the 85% tax uplift. The 3.1 million is a development charge deferral, and it's an option provided to the applicant. But we haven't seen any uptake, and the reason is because it has a 10% interest rate attached to it. So we haven't really had much uptake on the development charge deferral, but it's an option that's available to the applicant if needed. And the $800,000 contribution to the Municipal Leadership Strategy Fund, that's a revolving fund attached to the brownfield program. And its purpose is for municipal acquisition and pilot project on remediation project. But that fund has been on freeze for the last couple of years, and it's directly used to contribute to any budget pressure for the brownfield program currently.
Okay, so will that 817,000 be added to that fund and still frozen, or it won't be added to that fund?
It will be added and frozen.
Okay. That's interesting. How much is in that fund now that's frozen?
It's approximately 1.5 million.
Okay, this would be a 50% increase there. Given the sunk costs already in this lot, which include a rezoning application, an official plan amendment, the site plan work, all the reports and analysis and back and forth thought that's been done here with this process, why do you believe that this applicant would not build here without the subsidy from the city to remediate the site?
Mr. Chair, I don't know that staff are equipped appropriately to answer the question as to whether projects would go ahead. I am conscious that that's a question on the mind of members of council, but respectfully, staff are not in a position to make that judgment one way or the other. As the chair has pointed out, I think adequately, the funding through the CIP program is available to them. This project through the Brownfields grant will allow that funding to be transferred quicker. And that's the reason they proceeded with the application.
Okay, well, I appreciate the honesty. I think that's why we're reviewing the program now, is precisely that question and how many of these may have been built otherwise. Obviously, people who buy sites, they don't have an expectation that the municipality is obliged to approve all these applications, right? They still know that even though we have a program, it's not automatically approved if they apply.
That is clear within the documentation, but we have received correspondence from some other applicants that would lead us to question whether they believe that or not.
Thanks. Thank you for that. I really do appreciate that forthrightness.
Councillor Menard, just a quick point.
Yeah.
There is a representative on the line from Main and Main.
Okay.
If you have any questions.
I absolutely,
for-
that's great.
Yeah.
I will actually,
Yeah.
just to transition to that, and just for the applicant at Main and Main, is there, how much affordable housing is being built at the site?
Hi, through the chair. I'm Emily. I'm from Main and Main. I guess, Councillor Menard, just to answer your first question, to your very valid point, yes, we've spent a lot of money getting us to this point in fees and costs to get us to this, to get us under construction. While we, may have built or not part of the Brownfield grant program, it's very important when we're doing our underwriting before we actually purchase the project, that it's those costs are built in our forma, and that all those costs, all those fees that we pay along the way, have an end result. And to your point about affordable housing, all of those have a direct result. All those fees, all those costs, the Brownfield grant that we hopefully will obtain today, all have an end result to the actual cost of housing. So, while I can't say one way or another, if, we didn't get this grant, we wouldn't have purchased the project. It was a very key component as to how we made financial sense of the project and what the end result is going to be for the actual residents who live there and how much they're going to pay to live there. So it's a long haul of costs to the end user. To answer your second question, at the present moment, this particular phase will not have affordable housing units in it. However, it is a purpose-built rental property. It's not a condo. It will be 294 units of rental with commercial at grade.
Okay, thank you for that. I again appreciate the forthrightness here on this one. Obviously, there's been a concern about how much the municipality has spent over the years on this program. We've approved more than $150 million in tax breaks for developers who clean up contaminated sites since the program began 15 years ago. Now, obviously, those get phased in depending on when those charges are back, and that number would likely be lower given that not all of them are recouped. And I understand staff have talked to us about that as well. 90 million have been approved anyway, just in the last 5-year span from 2018 to 2023. So $90 million. I think if you look at our affordable housing capital spend, we've spent less than that over that same time. And so, I think it's important that we consider these applications. I'm really glad the review is happening for this one. But given all the money we keep spending on this program, I don't think there's an obligation to approve this. I certainly, obviously last term of council voted against these most chances that I got, and wouldn't be supporting this here today. And I think that the review really can't come soon enough, given that we don't know the answers on how much these would, if they would develop otherwise or not. And I guess the city of Ottawa's comparison to other municipalities that may or might not have this program, but $150 million, a lot of money over that time. And Mayor, I know we've worked together on this productively to get that review, and looking forward to the results of that. On this one, I won't support it today, but appreciate the dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Menard. I'll just, I don't see anybody else with their hand up. I'll just quickly add my own comments. As Councillor Menard said, I don't agree with, and I'm looking forward to the review, but I'm not I'm interested to hear the results of the review, but in principle, I'm not a fan of the Brownfields program. And there are other projects that are in the pipeline that will be potentially coming before us in the near future that add up to tens of millions of dollars that would be taxpayers paying for the cost of cleaning up properties. So this, I think the decision that's before us today I don't believe is going to affect whether or not this project goes ahead, because there is a CIP in place for it anyway, which we'll hit the maximum of. So it's just a question of where the money is going to come from. So I want to acknowledge that either way, the project is moving forward and the city is supporting it. But on principle, I'll be voting against the use of the brownfield program simply because I don't support using the brownfield program until we've completed that review and understand the results of it. So that's where I am on this. And if there's no one else, Councillor Lulaf.
Just briefly, given the history on this site, we're the ones that made this site a brownfield. It seems to me that it's our responsibility to clean it up. That's all I have to say. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Brockington.
Not to prolong the debate, Mayor, but one thing I'll just add is council made a decision to exclude this property from all other properties being restricted to this program. I believe I heard Councillor Plant say, and I think I recall the vote, that we allowed this to be under consideration for this opportunity. So to me, it would seem that council has not predetermined the outcome, but at least allowed this to be considered as an applicant, and that's why it's here today. So that's another reason why I will be supporting this application now, but like you, look forward to the review of this program going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brockington. Councillor Menard.
Thanks, Mayor. Just around the comment of the brownfield here and where it originates from and how that works. Obviously, parcel of land has been sold off. We in this city have agreed to an OPA and a zoning bylaw amendment. And that's immensely increased the value of this land and what can be extracted from it in the future. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of profit made here in the future. And so, you know, I take that point where the origination happened. But I think given the action of the municipality, there's been a lot of value added from the actions that we've taken to for this one. And, you know, just appreciate the dialogue around the table. So thanks, Mayor.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we'll take a recorded vote on this then, please.
Councillor Lulaf,
Yes.
Councillor Dudas,
Yes.
Councillor Curry,
Yes.
Councillor Tierney, or Councillor Gower,
Yes.
Councillor Tierney, Councillor King,
Yes.
Councillor Leeper,
Yes.
Councillor Brockington,
Yes.
Councillor Menard,
No.
Councillor Giroux,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kitts,
Yes.
Mayor Sutcliffe.
No.
9 yeas, 2 nays.
Okay, carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 7, are there any notices of motion? No? Any inquiries? Any other business? Motion to adjourn. Okay, thank you, everyone. Merci beaucoup.